Catholics can't be Freemasons, and that's because Freemasonry is anti-Catholic, anti-Christian, and is also anti-religion. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about Freemasonry since I released a few videos a few months back about Freemasonry. Well, now you are about to see a full definitive presentation that I recently gave at my local university all about Freemasonry. You are going to learn exactly what it is, what it's not, and why Christians cannot be Freemasons, even though it was started by Protestants. Check it out. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex. Thank you guys for giving me your attention here tonight. Very happy to be here with all of you. Most of you here are familiar faces. I saw you, was it 2 weeks ago that we were here? Man, 2 weeks just flies by. Well, thank you all so much for allowing me to give this presentation for all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I go by Voice of Reason online. I'm a full-time Catholic apologist. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Patreon, merch coming out from my man. It'll be coming out really soon at Voice of Reason. I'm Voice of Reason, so thank you all for coming. Because I have multiple social media accounts, that means that I'm qualified to talk about anything. And so here I am. Here I am. I have a quick question for you guys, just really quick. Is anybody here a Freemason? Anybody? No Freemasons? Not even one? Just checking. Okay. Today's presentation is about Freemasonry and the Catholic Church. Now, before we begin, does anybody know what Freemasonry is? Somebody? What? Go ahead, let's be interactive. Somebody talk to me. Someone, tell me what you know.
It's essentially a fraternity.
Essentially a fraternity? That's one way to call secret occult societies. That's one way to call them. Anybody else want to add to that?
A sketchy fraternity.
A sketchy fraternity. That's another way to describe secret occult societies. Anything else? Anybody?
Just a club.
A club. A weird club. So a weird, sketchy club. Well, we're off to a good start. Whenever we want to figure out what something is, right, we start with the word and we ask two questions. What does the word mean and what does the word refer to? So the word Freemasonry, or we'll start with just masonry, that word, it actually comes from a French word that just means builders of walls or stone workers. That's what it means. And Freemasonry refers to those builders of walls or those stone workers that were able to travel freely and offer their skills, their services to build big, beautiful buildings. So the Masons, the Freemasons, were those that went around and were the architects of the day, going all the way back to the turn of the millennium. So that's what the word means, but Freemasonry refers to something very specific. It refers to a secret society. A secret society that adopted the name Freemasons after the stone workers, right, of the turn of the millennium, adopted their name, and this secret society was started on June 24th, 1717 in England. So, the Freemasonry movement has its roots in medieval guilds of stonemasons. The vast majority of the members today are not masters of stonework. They base themselves off of the masters of stonework, but most Freemasons today don't know how to put two bricks together if you ask them to. And it's believed that stonemason membership decreased. The group began accepting speculative or honorary members to bolster the numbers because that trade, you know, as the methods of technology grew and got better, that trade kind of died off. So they based themselves off of it, but then they needed more members. Like, okay, you don't have to be a stone worker to be a Freemason. And the modern incarnation dates again to the 18th century, June 24, 717, and it was the Scottish and English men that came together in England, and they formed clubs, weird, sketchy clubs, for issues of philosophy, religion, and life in an organized setting. Look, fraternal organizations. Who said that it was a fraternity? Fraternity, right? So fraternal organizations had existed for centuries, but in 1717, a variety of these fraternal organizations got together to officially make the Freemasons. they came together in what is called a Grand Lodge. A Grand Lodge, think of the Grand Lodge, which is in England, like the Mother Lodge. Think of that as like the headquarters for the Freemasons. Think of that as like the Vatican of the church, right? To use an example. And they would meet, and this is where the weird thing comes in. They would meet to hold rituals and ceremonies to induct new members. Now, rituals aren't weird. We do rituals every single day. But the rituals that they did here, well, we're going to get into it, as the presentation goes on, and you'll see why these rituals are really weird. Because these rituals are secret rituals, and these ceremonies are secret ceremonies, and the requirements for the membership created a whole legendary origin. Here's something that we all need to understand. Freemasonry, because it's a secret society, everything that they put out themselves, you have to take with a grain of salt, because Freemasonry, they try to keep their secrets secret. So if they publish something publicly, we already know that they're very, very secretive about whatever it is that they do as Freemasons, that everything that they put out, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because sometimes they could be putting out things just to throw us off of their scent, so to speak. But this is what we do know. Freemasonry, what does it teach? Because we say that it's a club, it's a society, it's a fraternity, it's a group, and again, they talk about philosophy, religion, and science. It's a naturalistic religion. Yes, my friends, Freemasonry, believe it or not, is a religion, and it espouses indifferentism and the position that a person can be equally pleasing to God while remaining in any religion. So this is what Freemasonry teaches. This is what they believe. They model themselves after the great architects and scientists, right, at the turn of the millennium. Freemasons believe that you can know God, that the revelation of God is found in the natural world, and that the fullness of revelation of God is found in the natural world. So in sciences, right? We all know that there are patterns in science and the way that science works because of the intelligibility of the universe, which comes from the intelligence that is God. And Freemasons believe that science alone and the natural world, what we observe in the universe, is enough to know everything that we need to know about God. And they believe that the patterns that we see in the universe are God giving us secret messages about the truth that He has revealed to us. So it's very esoteric, and it's something that they safeguard and they keep. And they, from 717 up until today, we still know actually very little about what exactly is it that they are teaching about this secret knowledge that they claim to have, because they're the smartest people in the world who know the science better than anybody else, according to them, right? But guess what? They do have their own worship at their lodges with altars, prayers, and even a promise of reward and punishment in the afterlife. They have a hierarchy. They have an initiation for those that come in to the Freemason group, and they even have burial rites. And they have a deist attitude instead of a Christian attitude or a Jewish attitude or a Muslim attitude or whatever religion. Because they are deist in attitude, what that means is that they believe that God exists, but they don't necessarily believe that God is personal. But they do believe in ethics and morality, according to them. So there's an inconsistency there. They believe that God isn't necessarily personal, or He's only personal to the extent that He reveals it only in the natural world. Now, I don't know about you guys, but we can't get ethics or morality from the natural world. The natural world and the sciences about the universe have nothing to tell us about anything about morals or ethics, but the Freemasons claim that they can get their entire moral framework and fabric from what the natural sciences tell us. According to them, they interpret natural science in an ethical and moral way. But in Europe and in South America, Masons have often been involved in violent persecution of the Catholic Church. And in the United States, members are committed to supporting only public schools. They only support public schools, and they use only the King James Bible for those that are Christians. Now, in Freemasonry, There are Christians that are part of the Freemasons. There are Jews that are part of the Freemasons. There are Muslims that are part of the Freemasons. There are, even nowadays in the modern times, there are even atheists that belong to the Freemasons as well. It used to be a requirement that you had to believe in some deity, any deity. It doesn't matter which deity, because all of that stuff that we claim to be divine revelation isn't really divine revelation. It's just, Christianity and Judaism and Islam and all of these religions that we have, they're just nice narratives to try to explain things that God has fully revealed already in nature. So to them, to the Freemasons, religion is accidental to the truth of God's revelation. Religion is accidental. It's not essential. It's just, Christianity will help you understand Freemasonry. Islam will help you understand Freemasonry. Whatever you believe in will help you understand the truths of Freemasonry. So they see religion as just, they don't see it as essential to the beliefs, right? But they also, so check this out, this is what Freemasons do. These people are crazy, because they will actually retroactively apply themselves to the origins of civilization. Freemasons, who were founded on June 24 to 1717 in England, will claim that this group actually always existed. They were always around. They will claim that the Freemasons were there with God. They call God the Great Architect. That's how they refer to God. They don't give him a name. He is the Great Architect. And that God himself founded Freemasonry, and that it had for patrons Adam, the Adam that we read about in Genesis, the patriarchs, the kings and philosophers of old, and even Jesus Christ. Did you know that Freemasonry teaches that Jesus Christ was a Freemason? And that Jesus Christ was the Grand Master of the Christian church. Jesus Christ was really a Freemason, ladies and gentlemen, and he started Christianity to insert the esoteric truths of Freemasonry into it, and that if we're smart enough, or we know, the natural world enough, we'll understand the true hidden meaning, the esoteric meaning of Christianity. And they also say that the Freemasons were the ones who built Noah's Ark, the Tower of Babel, the pyramids in Egypt, and Solomon's Temple. Solomon's Temple was built by Freemasons, not by Solomon. And again, this is a retroactive history. They just go back and they say the Freemasons are responsible for all of this. And they find the origins of Freemasonry in the Egyptian, Dionysiac, Eleusinian, Mithraic, and Druidic mysteries. And in sects and schools such as Pythagoreans, the Essenes, the Chaldees, the Zoroastrians, and, of course, the Gnostics. The Gnostics were an early heretical Christian group that the apostles themselves were dealing with. The Gnostics claimed to have a special hidden revelation that God only revealed to them. And the Freemasons claim that what God revealed to the Gnostics is what they have preserved to this day and what they teach. And in evangelical societies that preceded the Protestant Reformation, they have their own orders. Just like how in Christianity we have religious orders, Freemasonry has their own orders. They have the knighthood, the Johannites, and the Templars. And by the way, they rip off everything. They want to take credit for the pyramids, for Solomon's Temple. They want to take credit for Christianity. They want to take credit for the Pythagorean theorem. They want to take credit for everything. They also even hijack the names, of actual Christian religious orders. So the Johannites and the Knights Templar. Who are the Knights Templar, Father, the real Knights Templar?
They were an order of knights that fought in the Crusades.
Right. The Freemasons claim that the Knights Templar were actually Freemasons. And they are the continuation of the Knights Templar, right? And also the Alchemists and all of these other groups, right? And that they were also part of Chinese and Arabic secret societies. And it's claimed that Pythagoras founded the Druidic institution, and hence that Masonry probably existed in England 500 years before Christ. That's what they claim. Nonsense, not true. But that's what they claim. And how is this secret esoteric group organized? Well, it's interesting because, again, they're organized in lodges. There's the Mother Lodge in England, and then they have all these other grand lodges all throughout the world. And there are smaller lodges that belong to each grand lodge. It's interesting. It reminds me of kind of like how the Christian church is set up. with dioceses and eparchies. And within each diocese, there is a group of parishes. Interesting that the Freemasons set up with the exact same identical structure. So they have the blue lodge, sometimes called the craft lodge, and it works or imparts, interesting language there, the 3 traditional degrees. They have the apprentice, which is the first degree, then the fellow craft mason, the second degree, and the master mason, 3 degrees. What does that remind you of? To me, it reminds me of the 3 degrees of apostolic ministers, deacon, presbyter, and bishop. Interesting. And these members, they learn grips and hand signs and rituals, which again are kept super secretive, and they reenact their central myth, and it is a myth, which is the death and resurrection of this guy named Hiram Abif, and he is the supposed builder of Solomon's temple. So Hiram Abif is the guy that was like the original Freemason. He's the one that cracked the code of the universe, discovered the mysteries of God, and he built Solomon's temple. Which is interesting that they say that this guy is the guy that built Solomon's temple, but then they want to take credit for things before Solomon's temple was built, like the pyramids in Egypt. Maybe they just didn't pay attention in history class and they didn't realize that the pyramids and all that came first before Solomon's temple, but whatever. And American local lodges, they are grouped, like I've already mentioned, in straight grand lodges, and they're recognized by the Mother Lodge in London, so they're in communion with the Mother Lodge, right? And Master Masons' wives can join the Order of the Eastern Star. That's what the group of female Masons that are only the wives of male Masons, and their daughters are called Job's daughters. You know, Job from the Bible. And the Order of the Rainbow for girls. And their sons, the Order of the Demolay. Now, Father Chris, I believe that you've actually had some run-ins or some interactions with some of these sons of Freemasons. Would you like to share with us any stories you'd like to tell us?
So de Molay is named for Jacques de Molay, who was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. And he was killed by King Philip the Fair of France, because King Philip wanted the wealth of the Templars in the 1300s after the Crusades were over. And in the, so this would be early 70s, the American bishops had lifted the ban on joining the Masons in America because they said the American Masons were just a fraternal club. And so I was in public high school at the time, after 9 years of Catholic school, and my Protestant friends said, oh, you could join de Molay now, because a bunch of them were in it. And at that time, Masons was very important if you wanted to advance in American civil society and economic society, be it in the Masons. They were very influential. So we went to the priest and said, can we do this? And the priest said, oh yeah, sure, you can do that now, because American Masons are not like the ones in Europe. So I joined. Holy God, what an education I got. Oh, and each different thing. The first weird thing was that if you revealed anything, you would be killed. That's pretty creepy. And then the next weird thing was, like the signs. And then after that, like the third meeting, we had to take an oath on the King James Bible. And all my Protestant friends went to the guy in charge and they said, well, Chris can't take an oath on the King James Bible. That's not going to work. And I said, well, he can bring I couldn't bring a Catholic Bible in. That was the thing. And then I was supposed to take an oath that I would only support public schools and public education and could not support parochial schools of any kind. And they were all saying, well, this isn't going to work. And then I started saying, well, this is definitely not going to work, guys. I can't stay in this. But it was interesting because after 4 meetings, I was out. And
how did you really get that far, Father?
So the first meeting was just finding where the place was, because Catholics didn't know where the Mason, we didn't even know where the Masonic temple was.
That's all secret there, huh?
Yeah. So anyway, it was just something you never went into, and it was interesting though for my Protestant friends because they all were going to the men in charge and saying, we thought Catholics would be able to join, but it's obvious Catholics can't join. You know, that we're saying and doing stuff that Catholics simply cannot believe in. So it was a wake-up call for everybody. And then we went back to the parish and we told Father and said, you know what, this isn't gonna work because there's something wrong. And the following year, the bishops put the ban back in place.
Yeah.
You know, because it was, there is a lot in there that's very anti-Catholic.
And we're going to get into the history of how the Catholic Church has always banned Freemasonry. We're going to get into that here at the end. The Freemasons, because they are a religion, they really are a religion. They even have their own rites, their rituals, and they even have their own symbols. Now, this is what people that are really good marketers, people that really want people to like buy into whatever it is that they're selling, they're very smart because they know that symbolism and marketing, symbolism is a huge part of marketing. They will go and they'll take certain symbols and they will say, these are our symbols now. And now when we see certain symbols, we think of the Freemasons because they're good marketers, right? And there were symbols that have always existed way before the Freemasons that they kind of hijacked and they turned them into Mason symbols. And a lot of these are actually Christian symbols that they hijacked. But they have their rites and their symbols. They have the strict hierarchy and they have a variety of ceremonies and rituals. They are initiated into the lodge. Members go through a series of degrees of membership, rising from entered apprentice to fellow craft to master mason. They learn the language, the rites, and the beliefs of the craft. And the beliefs of the craft of Freemasonry, that's what's like really, really kept secret. Like, what do they actually teach? That's still like a mystery because like Father Chris said, they'll kill you if you tell them what their secrets.
I'm still here, so. But apparently there were various crimes that were attributed to the Masons. Of people leaving them, and they did emphasize that. I don't know if they still do that, but it was a very big thing in the 1800s. That if you told, that you would die, and so when people would publish books about it, they always did it under a pseudonym, not under their real name, just in case somebody was fanatic. Because we all know there's always people that are crazy.
They would take blood oaths.
Stupid things.
And I've read, I don't know if I included it when I was doing my reading, so that I can never speak again. And they took that literally. And they took blood oaths. So it's very serious, right? But they, again, had these rituals that they falsely claimed to echo biblical beliefs. So they were ripping everything off from the Bible, right? They also adopt emblems like the square and compass, and it represents morality. Apparently, they can get to morality with shapes and a compass. If you know geometry really well, you'll be a moral person, according to them. And they have the beehive, which is said to represent cooperation and work among members. So they even hijacked bees and their beehives, okay? And the eye of providence, or the all-seeing eye, which represents God's eternal watchfulness, which is on our dollar bill. Now, the eye of providence was actually a Christian symbol. The eye of providence was a Christian symbol. It was a way to depict God the Father, because God the Father didn't become incarnate. So over the last 2,000 years, Christian artists would try to find ways to represent the Holy Trinity and represent God the Father. The eye of providence was actually a Christian symbol that they hijacked. And now when you see it, no one knows that it's a Christian symbol. They think that it's a symbol of the Freemasons, and it is on a dollar bill. Just so you guys know, of all of the presidents that we've had, 14 of them were Freemasons. Of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence, it was like 52 people that signed it, 9 of them were Freemasons. So Freemasonry, because it was founded in the year 1717 in England, right, and in Scotland, it was all those British people. They were the ones that started the American Revolution. So a lot of them were indeed Freemasons. George Washington was one. Thomas Jefferson was one. A total of 14 of the presidents that we've had were Freemasons. And Freemasons will try and tell you that all presidents were Freemasons, that every single U.S. president is a Freemason. It's not true. Only 14 of them were. But they also have a very anti-Christian history. See, they tolerate all of these other religions. They tolerate them because they're like, again, to them, religion is just accidental. And, yeah, believe in God, and if Christianity or Judaism or Islam or whatever helps you sleep better at night, that's fine. But they make you take an oath to Freemasonry before you take an oath to like Christianity, right? But they're very anti-Christian because when the Christians caught on to what they were doing, the Christians started speaking out and they became more anti-Christian because of it. U.S. Masons were active in anti-Catholic groups like the Know Nothings and the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan were all Freemason Protestants, and the Ku Klux Klan hated blacks, Catholics, and Jews, and they were Freemasons. The Ku Klux Klan was started by Freemasons. And they used to be very influential in upper levels of U.S. society, in Congress, in the courts, in industry, in finance, even in the middle class, blocking advancements of Catholics in many areas of political and economic life. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of Americans don't know this. Catholics were discriminated against for a really, really, really long time in the United States. From the founding, because remember, the United States was a Protestant country. Catholics were discriminated against. It was illegal to be a Catholic in the United States for quite a while. A lot of people don't know this, right? And the Protestants, a lot of them who were Freemasons, they would only allow other people that were in the Freemasons to move up in society. And the reason that they did this is because even starting in 1717, it was such an exclusive club. They only wanted rich people to be a part of it. So if you wanted to be a Freemason, you had to donate money, like a lot of money, so that they could let you in. And that's how the Freemasons got so rich and got so much money, because it was like an exclusive club for the wealthy. And here in the United States, they wouldn't allow Catholic people to be able to fully participate in civil life and in work, because they kept them down, because they would only give jobs and high status jobs to people who were Freemasons. But outside of the Anglo-American world, they pushed for totally secular societies with sharp restrictions on religion. And check this out. So in Freemasonry, there are different types of Freemasons, right? If Freemasonry is the big overarching group, within Freemasonry, there's all of these different types of Freemasons, right? There's the Blue Lodge. The most famous one is the Scottish Rite, right? And the Scottish Rite actually doesn't have just 3 degrees of Freemasonry. They have 33 degrees of Freemasonry, right? There's the Scottish Rite. There's the Knights Templar. There's the Illuminati. There's all these different groups within Freemasonry. But the most popular one in the West is the Scottish Rite. And when you get to the 18th degree in the Scottish Rite, it's called the Rose Croix degree. It reinterprets the cross and its INRI inscription as pagan symbols. We all know that INRI is Latin. It's Jesus Nazarenus Rex Eodeum. How do you say the I part? Eodorum, right? Which means Jesus Christ, King of the Jews. Well, again, they go back and they retroactively reinterpret history, and they say that INRI, that inscription is a secret Masonic message. Not true. Anyway, and if you're a candidate for the 30th degree in the Scottish Rite, which is called the Knight Kadosh, guess how you are initiated into the 30th degree? You have to trample over a papal tiara. You know, back in the day, popes used to wear these really big, beautiful, they were called the papal tiaras, right? What they would do is that they would put the papal tiara on a skull, and then they would have to step on it, and they would have to get like a lance, and they would have to stab the skull with their lance, wearing the papal tiara. And that was part of their initiation, signifying that they hate Jesus Christ and his vicar, because they do. And they cry down, "Down with the impostor." The Pope is the impostor because to them, Jesus Christ is the impostor. Because Jesus Christ can't be God to them, because God isn't a person. God is nature. It's a naturalistic religion. And then he will vow to propagate the light and overthrow superstition. So now, religion went from being tolerable to later on, religion is just superstition, and we need to get rid of all religion. And fanaticism and intolerance and all of these qualities that are implicitly identified with Catholic Christianity. I'm going to tie this all together for you guys here at the end, and I'm going to give you guys a broad view of history and how the devil works. I'm going to get to it here at the end, okay? They have explicit anti-Catholic sentiments. Now, I'm just going to read this to you guys, okay? There's a really famous Freemason magazine called The Voice that is printed out of Chicago. And this is what The Voice printed. There is nothing in the Catholic religion which is adverse to Masonry. For the truth is that Masonry embodies that religion in which all men agree. This is as true as that all veritable religion, wherever found, is in substance the same. So again, they teach indifferentism. All religion is basically the same, like whether you're a Christian, Catholic, Protestant, whether you're a Jew, Muslim, it's all the same thing. And it says, neither is it in the power of any man or body or of men to make it otherwise. Doctrines and forms of observance conformable to piety imposed by spiritual overseers may be as various as the courses of wind, and like the latter may war with each other there upon the face of the whole earth, but they are not religion. Bigotry and zeal, the assumptions of the priestcraft, with all of its countless inventions to magnify and impress the world, are ever the mainsprings of strife, hatred, and revenge, which defame and banish religion and its inseparable virtues, and work unspeakable mischief wherever mankind are found upon the earth. Popery and priestcraft are so allied that they may be called the same. The truth being that the former is nothing more nor less than a special case of the latter, being a particular form of a vicious principle. So Pope to the priesthood is a vicious principle, right? With itself is but the offspring of the conceit of self-sufficiency and the lust of dominion. Nothing which can be named is more repugnant to the spirit of Masonry, nothing to be more carefully guarded against, and this has been always well understood by all skillful masters, and it must in truth be said that such is the wisdom of the lessons, Masonic instruction of lodges, etc., in similar discussions containing in almost every word a hidden or open attack on Christianity, the truly Masonic magazines and books of all countries abound. So there was this Grand Deacon here in the United States. So yeah, they have deacons in Freemasonry, right? So not even trying to hide that they're ripping everything off of Christianity. Deacon J.C. Parkinson, an illustrious English Mason, he avows, he said, the two systems of Romanism and Freemasonry are not only incompatible, but they are radically opposed to each other. An American Masons say, we won't make a man a Freemason until we know he isn't a Catholic. So there is a huge anti-Catholic sentiment within Freemasonry hates Catholicism. Look at how the Scottish Rite, the 30th degree, how they're initiated into the 30th degree. Thrusting a lance into a skull, wearing the papal tiara. They hate the Catholic Church because they hate Jesus Christ, because they hate the truth. Now, why the ban? Well,
So do they still do that, or is that?
they still do that.
That's from the 1800s?
They still do that. There are ex-Masons that were part of the Scottish Rite. They came out and said, yeah, I was a 33rd degree Mason. I had to do that. Some that have come out. And by the way, just so you guys know, in the past couple hundred of years, whenever people actually tried to speak out against the Freemasons, they tried to leave the Masons, there are so many cases, documented cases of people disappearing. When they leave the Freemasons, they disappear. Documented cases. And now more and more are coming out because Freemasonry now today is super weak. It's not as strong as it was back in the day. Like it's really fallen in power. So more Masons feel comfortable coming out and talking, speaking out about Freemasonry because they don't really have that kind of power anymore. But why the ban? So Freemasonry was first banned by the Catholic Church in the year 1738 by Pope Clement XII, who forbade Catholics from joining the church and encourages them to associate with Catholic organizations instead, like the Knights of Columbus. And the Knights of Columbus were founded in 1882, and they were founded specifically to combat Freemasonry. So Pope Clement XII was the first pope to ban Freemasonry in 1738. And we have, ever since Pope Clement XII, we have had something like 30 popes since then, more than that, 40 popes that have all there's been close to 30 explicit condemnations of Freemasonry by the Pope since 1738. The principles have always been considered undesirable by the doctrine of the Church, and therefore membership in them remains forbidden. Why? Because what do Freemasons say? Freemasons say that Christianity isn't essential for salvation. Freemasons say that Jesus Christ isn't the way to God. And that's what Christianity says. That's what Catholicism teaches. So if Freemasons have a different message, no, you can't be a Freemason and be a Catholic. The faithful who enrolled in Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion. Why? Well, as if this whole presentation isn't enough, right? Well, the Gnostic attitude of hidden knowledge, that God is the great architect and God is not Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and it is an alternate religion, and they persecuted Catholics. Okay? Now, let me see if there's another. So, constant church condemnation. So here they are. Here are all of the condemnations of Freemasonry by all of the popes since Clement XII. So we've had Clement XII, Benedict XIV, Pius XII, Leo XII, Pius VIII, Gregory XVI, Pius IX. Where else? A whole bunch. Pius IX put out a whole bunch, and then Leo XIII as well. And who else? And then also recent popes have done it as well. Now, Father Chris mentioned earlier that for like 2 years, under 2 years, the ban on Freemasonry had been lifted. It wasn't really lifted, but this is what happened. So we get the Code of Canon Law, and it gets updated every so often. So the current Code of Canon Law that we have now is the Code of 1983. And for those of you who don't know, canon law is just like how the Catholic Church is governed. So the Catholic Church promulgates these canons, and it is the rule of how the church governs and how it functions, right? Well, 1983 is the current Code of Canon Law. Before the 1983 Code of Canon Law, the previous code was the Code of 1917. Now, every single Code of Canon Law from the time of Clement XII in 1738, every single Code of Canon Law had an explicit ban on Freemasonry, and the Code of Canon Law in 1917 even says, if you are a Catholic and you become a Freemason, you are automatically excommunicated. There is an automatic excommunication for any Catholic that becomes a Freemason. You can't do it. You can't be a Freemason and be a Catholic. If you try and you do and you become a Freemason knowing that the Catholic Church says you can't, you are automatically, at the moment that you do it, excommunicated. And excommunication is a canonical censor, meaning that you can't even go to confession until you get that censor removed. And even if you become a Freemason and you do it in secret, you're like, oh, they're not going to know that. No, the automatic excommunication is something that is ratified in heaven. So God knows that you're not really Catholic anymore. And if you still pose as a Catholic and you still go and you receive the Eucharist, even though you've been excommunicated, oh, you're a liar. You're a liar. You're a liar and you're committing a grave sacrilege. So no one has to know. Your priest, your local priest doesn't have to know. The bishop doesn't have to know. The Pope doesn't have to know. God knows. And that excommunication applies to you. Whether you do it secretly or not, you're excommunicated and you can't receive the sacraments. And if you do, now you're really in trouble. Now you've committed a grave sacrilege. So, in the Code of 1983, the excommunication for being a Freemason is not in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. And that was actually kind of by accident when they printed, because they have a bunch of people that work on the Code of Canon Law and they edit it. And when they put it out, they kind of like forgot to add that part, that if you are part of any secret society, you are excommunicated, right? Shows how organized we are, right? But anyway, so when they realized, like, oh my goodness, like the Code of Canon Law doesn't have the canonical censor for being a Freemason anymore, and they realized it because there were Catholics in the United States that were becoming Freemasons. So the Pope John Paul II, had Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict XVI, who just passed away back in December. Joseph Ratzinger, he came out, and it's part of the magisterium, he came out and he released a document saying, no guys, all of the prohibitions and the canonical censors of the previous Code of Canon Law still apply to the Code of Canon Law of 1983. So even though the Code of Canon Law doesn't explicitly say it, Cardinal Ratzinger clarified and he said, nope, those codes, those canonical censors still apply. So even to this day, if you become a Freemason and If you're a Catholic, you become a Freemason, you're excommunicated. So that was where the confusion was, and it took them like under 2 years to realize that they forgot to put that part into the Code of Canon Law. So they fixed the mistake. It's always been not allowed by the Catholic Church. Many Catholics don't know that, especially here in the United States, because many Catholics, when was the last time any of you read the Code of Canon Law? That's why we don't know. And Freemasons now, Freemasons today, they're really cool with everybody, man. They want to have good relations with everybody. So Catholics, come on board. Even though I just read to you all of the Ku Klux Klan, right? What we just read, that they were very anti-Catholic. They kind of don't want to, they don't want to look at that history. So that everyone's invited, Catholics, everybody, man. No, you can't do it. The Freemasons will accept you, but the Catholic Church does not accept Freemasonry because it's a false religion. And so couldn't Catholics just join lodges in the U.S. that weren't anti-Catholic? And there are like no anti-Catholic lodges. There are some that still are, but there aren't really any like explicitly anti-Catholic lodges in the U.S. anymore because they're trying to be cool with everybody because they lost all their money and all their power, so they like need everyone to like them. Again, this happened in the U.S. under the impression that since these did not call for persecution of the church, it would be allowed. Again, everything that I just said. In 1981, Rome told the bishops no authority to judge the character of local Masonic associations and under the impression that since these did not call for persecution of the church, it would be allowed. Again, everything that I just said. In 1981, Rome told the bishops no authority to judge the character of local Masonic associations and relaxed the restrictions. But then in 1983, Cardinal Ratzinger specified the ban is still in place. And then in 1985, the U.S. bishops reiterated the ban on the membership. They came out explicitly and said, nope, you can't be a Freemason. So any Catholics that did become Freemasons for that short 2-year period, they had a free pass. And then once in 1985, once it was made clear, okay, sorry, nope, not a Freemason. I disavow the Freemasons because they don't want to be excommunicated. Many Protestant churches don't allow it, nor do some Orthodox, nor do the Mormons. But ladies and gentlemen, be clear. Let's be clear here. Freemasonry. All of the Freemasons that started Freemasonry on June 24th, 1717, they were all Protestants. Every single one of them. They were Freemasonry was started by Protestants. And again, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to give you guys a broader review of history to tell you how the devil works, right? But now, a lot of Protestants churches have realized that Freemasonry is not good. So the Evangelical Lutheran Church, the Wisconsin and Missouri Synod of the Lutheran Church, the Nazarene sect, the Salvation Army, the Reformed churches, Assembly of God, Quakers, Adventists, some Presbyterians, Anglicans, and Scottish presbyters are now concerned about the theology of the Freemasons, right? And the Orthodox, Greece, Romania, Russian church outside of Russia, and the Orthodox Church in America, they now ban Freemasonry. Let's talk about what it isn't really quick. So there are conspiracy theories that speculate that all Freemasons have the same beliefs and act as a body and are part of a Jewish-influenced New World Order which controls international finance and relations. Not true. There wasn't a single Jew that was part of those original Freemasons in 1717. That came much later. And they're definitely not Satan worshipers because to be a Freemason, you had to believe in a deity, you had to believe in God. Although, because there are literally thousands and thousands of different types of Freemasons, there are some Freemasons now that, especially here in the United States, because we have freedom of religion, so because I'm a hippie, if I want to worship Satan, hey, the Constitution gives me that right, man. I can worship Satan as my God. There are Freemasons that now allow Satanists into the Freemasons. But historically, they were not Satan worshipers. And actually, as a matter of fact, historically, Freemasons rejected the idea of Satan. Said that Satan is not true. It's not. Satan to them just meant that you didn't know geometry well enough. And because you didn't know geometry well enough, you couldn't find the hidden revelation of God. So that's how you were in the clutches of Satan by not knowing the natural sciences. That's what they meant by Satan, right? But the Freemasons were persecuted by communists and Nazis. And it's very interesting that they were persecuted by communists and Nazis because, well, we'll get into it. And they did evolve, again, from Christian-oriented to more naturalistic religion and hostility to Christian orthodoxy. Do I have any more slides? So this is what it leads to, all right? This is what Freemasonry leads to. The following are the principles of Freemasonry. Check this out. Number one, to destroy radically by open persecution of the church or by a hypocritical, fraudulent system of separation between church and state, all social influence of the church and of religion, insidiously called clericalism, and as far as possible to destroy the church and all true superhuman religion, which is more than a vague cult of fatherland and of humanity. That's number one. So they want to do a complete separation of church and state, and they want to eliminate all of what we believe is divinely revealed religion, right? Number two, to laicize or secularize by a likewise hypocritical and fraudulent system of unsectarianism, right? So they don't want sex. They want all of us to be part of the one religion known as Freemasonry. They don't want sex. They want us all to be united as Freemasons. They want to eliminate all religions and let's all be united together under the Freemasons, right? Unsectarianism, as understood by the Grand Orient Party, is anti-Catholic and even anti-Christian, atheistic, positivistic, or agnostic sectarianism in the garb of unsectarianism. Freedom of thought and conscience of the children, check this out, freedom of thought and conscience of the children has to be developed systematically in the child at school and protected as far as possible against all disturbing influences, not only of the church and priests, but also of the children's own parents. If necessary, even by means of moral and physical compulsion. Freemasons believe in shaming parents or even physically hurting the parents of children if the parents try to teach children anything other than the values of Freemasonry. They don't want the church to educate our children, and they don't even want parents to educate our children. They want to educate the children. The Grand Orient Party considers it, and the Grand Orient is one of those sects of Freemasonry, considers it indispensable and an infallibly sure way to the final establishment of the universal social republic and of the pretended world peace as they fancy them, and of the glorious era of human solidarity and of unsurpassable human happiness in the reign of liberty and justice. What does all of that sound like to you guys? All of that language, everything that I just said, what does that sound like to you?
Sounds like they don't know any Freemasons.
Oh my goodness. The universal social republic and of the pretended world peace as they fancy them, and of the glorious era of human solidarity and of unsurpassable human happiness in the reign of liberty and justice. This is communism. This is communism. The logical end of Freemasonry is communism. And the Grand Orient Party, they're the ones that really figured it out. They figured it out that the deep truth of Freemasonry is that Freemasonry leads to communism. And check this out, guys. Do I have any more slides? The true face of Masonry. Let me read this. Check this out. Another example of how anti-Christian Freemasonry is. The president of the Grand Orient, Senator whatever his name is, said on September 20th of 1902, he said, "The triumph of the Galilean," who's the Galilean?
Christ.
Jesus Christ. "The triumph of the Galilean has lasted 20 centuries, 2,000 years. But now he dies in his turn. The mysterious voice announcing to Julian the Apostate," you guys know who Julian the Apostate was? He was a Roman emperor. You guys have no idea what he did to the Christian church. "The death of Pan today announces the death of the impostor God who promised an era of justice and peace to those who believe in him. The illusion has lasted a long time. The mendacious God is now disappearing in his turn. He passes away to join in the dust of ages the other divinities of India, Egypt, Greece, and Rome, who so many deceived creatures prostrate before their altars. Brother Masons, we rejoice to state that we are not without our share in this overthrow of the false prophets. The Romish Church, founded on the Galilean myth, began to decay rapidly from the very day on which the Masonic Associations was established. 1902, the Grand Master of the Grand Orient, the Senator of the Grand Orient, said that. And then they had a decline, which is good, glory to Jesus Christ. But let me do a whole overview, guys. So Freemasonry is all about patterns, right? All about patterns. Like, see, look at the patterns in the universe, and you'll know the truth of God. Well, I'm a patterns guy too. We all are patterns people. We notice patterns. That's what we do. Well, I noticed a very interesting pattern. What year were they founded? 1717, right? They were founded by who? What is the origin of Protestant? What year? The Protestant Revolution. 1517. So the Protestant Revolution happened in 1517. 200 years later, these Protestants came together and they started Freemasonry in 1717. And then something very interesting happened exactly 200 years after that in 1917. What happened in 1917?
The October Revolution.
The October Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution. And what did that revolution bring us? Communism. So, patterns, right? 1517, 1717, 1917, 200 years, every 200 years. This is how Satan works, okay? In 1517, this is what Satan did. He lied to us. He said, hey man, Christianity, that's great. The divine, the revealed divine truth, that's great. That's great. But you know what? You can know it all by yourself. You can decide what the divine revealed truth really means. You can interpret the Bible according to what you think it means. So, divine revelation, yeah, man, that's great. But you decide what it means. That's what Protestantism is. That's what the doctrine of sola scriptura ultimately leads you to. You become your own pope and you get to decide. You get to be the infallible interpreter of Scripture, right? So that was Satan's first trick. Just like he tricked us when he tricked Adam and Eve. And he said, no, if you eat the fruit of the tree, you're going to just know all of these. Satan is always tempting us with knowledge. Always tempting us with knowledge. You're going to know all of the things that God knows and you're going to be like God. Right? That was the lie that he told to Adam and Eve, that he told to Eve. And then in 1517, he told Martin Luther, he said, you can be the Pope. You can know what divine revelation really means. Right? And then that was 1517, right? And then 200 years later in 1717, Satan told those people that started Freemasonry, he said, hey guys, divine revelation, that's good, that's all good, but that stuff is just like, it just helps you. None of it is really real. Like, these are just stories. Like, what's really real is like what's in the universe, man. Like the universe, when you look at the universe, then you really know what God really revealed to us. Like, all of these stories are cool and they can help out, but the real revelation, it's in the stars, man. It's in the universe. And if you're smart and if you know geometry and you know all of these things, you can know what God really did reveal. So we went from divine revelation, great, you get to decide what it is. And then from there, it went to divine revelation, no such thing. The only revelation is really what's natural. And then 200 years later, in 1917, what did Satan tell us? God doesn't exist at all. And that's what communism tells us. Communism tells us that God doesn't exist at all. So we went from divine revelation that Jesus gave us to divine revelation, okay, but you decide what it is, to divine revelation doesn't even exist at all, to God doesn't really exist at all. And the Bolshevik Revolution, the October Revolution, guess who all those people that started communism? Guess who they were influenced by?
The Jesuits.
I thought I was going to get through this whole presentation without somebody making that comment. By the Freemasons. So it is a gradual, subtle decline that started in 1517 and it culminated in 1917. What else happened in 1917? Can anybody tell me? What else happened in 1917?
Virgin Mary.
Has to do with Mary.
Fatima.
Fatima. Our Lady came down from heaven and she appeared in Fatima, Portugal. And what did she tell those kids? She said, if you don't repent and turn back to my son, Jesus Christ, the errors of Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution, the errors of Russia are going to spread to the entire world. Everything that we just read here in these slides, the things that Freemasons want to do, everything, all of this right here, what they want to do, this sounds an awful lot like what we saw with the Bolshevik Revolution, with communism, and it sounds an awful lot like what we're seeing now in this country. There's a huge sect of Americans that actually want this. They want this. They want this. So it is a slippery slope, but that slippery slope exists, it's real. If you leave the Catholic Church, even if you go to evangelical Protestantism, to whatever, I'm sorry, but eventually, if you carry that out to its logical conclusion, the logical conclusion of the Protestant Revolution was Freemasonry, and Freemasonry is what inspired the French Revolution in 1789. The French Revolution came directly from Freemasons. In fact, the Freemasons were the ones who were involved in the French Revolution. The French Revolution is what set the stage for communism. When you leave the Catholic Church, if you carry that out to its logical conclusion, you end up godless. That's why the church teaches that there's no salvation outside of the Catholic Church. Because once you leave Christ's church, what else is there? Nothing. Because everything else that you think is there, it's false. You end up godless. Any questions?
Show the last slide.
Oh yeah, this is good. This is a happy note to, a happy note to end on. The decline, thank God. Well, here's the thing. Protestantism declined. And then we got Freemasonry. Freemasonry declined. We got communism. When communism declines, what could be worse than that? Well, it has to be tried in all these places first, right? Because it's never been tried correctly, guys. But anyway, the decline. Freemasonry membership has gone down for years. 6 million worldwide. Why? Well, there's a general decline of fraternal organizations and service clubs, and then others attribute the falling membership to the movement's refusal to recognize women as full members. And also, not only that, guys, for the longest time, women weren't allowed to be Freemasons, and also black people weren't allowed to be Freemasons for a long time. They had to create a separate sect. They were segregationists. They created a separate sect for black people called the Princes, something like that, for just black people, right? And there was a growing public awareness of the movement's once secret rituals. You can Google a lot of it, and you can see the things that they did. They were like, this is weird, and they left it. And they're no longer powerful in the U.S. society. They're not needed for advancement in companies anymore, or civil service, or banking, or any of that. So they have declined. But the reason that they decline is because that's what the devil does. The devil will seduce you, and the devil will make you do whatever he wants you to do, and then he'll turn his back on you, and he'll leave you because he used you as a means to get to the next step of his diabolical plan. So just like the devil seduced Martin Luther, and then the devil seduced, all the other reformers, and they thought they were righteous, they thought they were good, and then he turned their back on them, and then he had the Freemasons, and then he gave the Freemasons everything they wanted, and then he turned their back on them, because then we had the Bolsheviks. And it got so bad, if it gets to the point where Mary has to come down from heaven to warn us, that's how you know it's pretty bad. That's how you know it's pretty bad. So the last 500 years, we've seen Satan work in history. You know the saying, the devil is in the details, the devil is in the historical details. Wonder what's going to happen in 2117. Anyway, any questions, guys? Any questions? Anything? Oh, thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. So none of us will ever be Freemasons, right? Good. No questions? Go ahead, my friend.
So I know you mentioned Mormonism rejects
Yeah.
Freemasonry. Is that
I think all of Mormonism has wholesale completely said no, you can't be Freemason because they're their own occult group. I'm just kidding, kind of, not really. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, Mormons have always rejected it because they do their own thing. They do their own thing. Go ahead.
Piggybacking off of that, I heard on the Kel Clark show like a year ago that
Uh huh.
Joseph Smith was apparently a Freemason at one point.
Mhm.
He was killed by Freemasons. Do you know anything about that?
That's what they say. We don't know for sure that he was killed by Freemasons, but we do have really good evidence that suggests that he himself was a Freemason. So we know he died in a gunfight in jail. That's one way to go out, right? You're a prophet, you're guy that's received revelation, that he went out, in jail in a gunfight.
Yeah, they broke into the jail and
They,
pulled him out and killed him.
yeah, they broke in, pulled him out, and they killed him. But he fought. He had like his guns with him too, and he was. But anyway, yeah, we do have evidence that suggests that Joseph Smith was a Freemason. And so here's how Freemasonry works too. Even with the people that are in Freemasonry, they're so secretive, even with the people that are within their own ranks. And I wish I had put it in a slide. I did a lot of reading. Freemasons, to the people that are already Masons that are inside the lodge, they won't even tell them explicitly what it is that Freemasonry teaches. What they tell them is they'll say, hey, look, what we have to show you guys is something that actually can't be taught, but you can learn it. Just follow our lead, do what we do what we tell you to do, and you're going to see it yourself. You have to see it. They brainwash them. They're like, you have to see it yourself. You see, if we tell you ourselves and you didn't arrive at this conclusion by yourself, like it's not going to mean anything to you. Like you need to arrive to this conclusion by yourself. But don't worry, we promise that as long as you stick with us and you do everything that we tell you and you keep supporting us financially with whatever we ask you to do, and you just keep learning, doing the things that we tell you, you'll eventually arrive at this knowledge of yourself. But you have to keep it a secret, and you can't even share it with even other Masons. You have to keep it in your own mind. You have to keep it in your own head, because again, once you reach it, you're going to be so happy that you know the fullness of the truth and that you came to it, you arrived to it by yourself. You don't want to ruin it for your fellow Mason, right? So don't tell them. When you learn this thing, don't tell them. That's how they brainwash them. So the Freemason, they're like, oh man, I'm going to learn something. I have to be super aware so I can see the patterns and so that I can learn what, and it's going to come to me. And they'll even tell them, like, and by the way, don't feel bad if it takes you years or even decades. Just keep going, and even by the end of your life, you'll for sure know the truth of Freemasonry. Who buys this nonsense? But once you figure that out, you can't tell anybody. So that's how they keep everybody brainwashed. And they say, if you do tell somebody, you've just dishonored your fellow Masons, so we're gonna have to kill you. So keep your mouth shut. Once you learn the truth, be happy you learned the truth, but don't tell anybody anything, right? So that's and Joseph Smith. I think that Joseph Smith, because we do have a lot of evidence to suggest that he was a Freemason, we think that Joseph Smith, he learned the truth all right, and that's how we got Mormonism. He believed, from what he was learning in the Mason Lodge, that led him to make the claims that he made, that what he taught in Mormonism is a result of Freemasonry. Go ahead.
Do you happen to know if Charles Darwin was a Mason or associated with?
I don't know about Charles Darwin, but it wouldn't surprise me.
This is very
Because it's a naturalistic. Yeah, naturalistic. It wouldn't surprise me. There have been many prominent, like Shaquille O'Neal is a Freemason. Shaquille O'Neal is a part of the Scottish Rite, and he claims that he's like a 33rd degree Freemason. That's what he says. So he did that's as high as you can go. So he's a grand, that's what he claims, right? Or that he's working up, see, he's a Freemason. We know he's a Freemason. Many people in society that were Freemasons, again, 14 US presidents, 9 of the founding church fathers, founding fathers of America, 9 of them were Freemasons. Beethoven was a Freemason. So many like sports stars were Freemasons. Like you can literally Google it and be like famous Freemasons. And yeah, there's quite a few. It's very prominent. So Charles Darwin, it would not surprise me at all if he was. He probably is, honestly. Probably is. Any more questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that like there's a lot of like cases of like disappearances and people like
Mhm.
discovered or
Yep.
trying to go out. Have these cases that have been reported in like, you know, any state like judicial history or anything like that? Or-
Yep.
Mhm.
I read about it. You can look it up. People that disappear mysteriously. But here's the thing. This would happen back when Freemasons were involved in the courts. A lot of judges were Freemasons.
Yeah.
So check this out. This is how deep Freemasonry is. Ever since 1717, when there would be conflicts, right, between like wars between societies, check this out. There would be times when one state would go to war with another state, and they'd be on the battlefield and they'd be fighting, and the Freemasons, because there would be Freemasons on both sides, because Freemasonry was all over Western Europe and Eastern Europe too. They'd be fighting each other, right? They would flash these secret Masonic hand signs. And if they flashed the hand signs and then somebody on the other side, they would flash they would know the hand sign as well. They would stop fighting each other and they would actually team up and they would defend each other. So they're representing different states, different countries, right? Different kingdoms or whatever it is. But they recognize each other from their hand signs and they would form an alliance. And part of the oath for Freemasonry is, it's actually explicitly in the oath. It says that my Mason brother comes first even before my brothers, like in my countrymen. So Masons have an obligation to, a Freemason here in Albuquerque, New Mexico has more of an obligation to a Freemason in Argentina than he does any of you sitting here, fellow Americans. He has to put his Freemasons anywhere in the world above any of us. So because of their secret hands, they have ways of identifying each other, and they can know who's Freemasons because they have ways, they have their secret hand symbols or whatever it is. And that's how deep it was. Even on a battlefield during wars, when states would go to war with one another, there would be the Freemasons on one side, and on the other side, wouldn't fight each other. As a matter of fact, they would protect each other from their own, that's treason. They would be protecting somebody on the other side of the battlefield from their fellow soldiers. Treason. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to me for all this time. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you.